Today's going to be the start of a new project. I'm going to take one of these and turn it into a stone sculpture. That was 6 months ago. I actually don't know which one of these I'm going to be sculpting yet. I put up a poll on my YouTube channel to see which one you guys thought would make a cooler stone sculpture, and so we'll see what the results of that poll are. I just wanted to show you my process for turning a maquette or a sculpted design into a finished stone sculpture. This design part is really important. You want to have a design that you're happy with, that you think looks good, and if it doesn't look good in the clay maquette to use as a reference for your big sculpture, then it's not going to look good in stone. I'm going to try to sculpt the stone piece about twice this size, or maybe a little bit larger, and it might be a little bit thicker. We'll see. So it's really cold outside. Last I checked it was -6 degrees. I'm going to be sculpting out in the garage. I'm going to be grabbing a piece of stone from the yard, and I want to make sure I'm warm. Thanks, Tom. Angle grinder. This is what we're going to be using for a lot of the sculpt. Most of the sculpt is just this 5-inch variable speed angle grinder. I really like this. It's a tool I use all the time. Let's go see if we can find a piece of stone to sculpt. And then I also have this, my favorite blade for this angle grinder. A diamond blade for marble and granite, though granite's pretty hard. I try not to use this on granite because it wears it out really fast. So I like to use this blade for stone. And you can see that it's got an attachment so that it can be flush. So I can get really flat surfaces, so I'm going to be using this to flatten the bottom. That's important, that you can get a flush, flat surface right here. Oh, it's a good size. I forgot how big it was. So right here, if you can see that, this is where I took a regular flat file that I got from, I think, Harbor Freight, and I just filed away on this stone a little bit just to see what it was like, and it's nice, soft limestone, I believe. Ooh, yep, that's heavy. Okay. It's probably like, I don't know, maybe 50 to 70 pounds, somewhere in that range. This is an N95 respirator, just to hopefully remove all the dust particles. Some wood, and lift it up. Then I'm going to use this straight edge just here on the side. The pole, 73% want the queen. What I decided to do before I got going drawing the pattern or the silhouette of the maquette, flatten out the sides and try to get it squared up. I've just been taking the square and going back and forth as I'm working the different sides, just checking as I'm going. That way, when I do measurements, like let's say for waist comes in an inch on this side, I can also make it go in an inch on the back side, and then I can do a cut all the way through, and I know that that's a solid measurement because these sides are perpendicular and that these sides are parallel. Let me just get a shot of this this camera, just how dusty this camera is. So that's why I didn't want to bring the nice camera out. I've got my maquette ready. We're gonna start going in and just holding the sculpture in front of the stone and laying in that side profile from the front view. I'll turn the stone to the side and then also from the side view. Start making those cuts to get the basic shape from those two angles. But before I get to that, I'm gonna go ahead and raise this table up because yesterday I was sculpting a lot. The table's just a little bit too low, so you're kind of bending over a little bit more, and after a couple hours of sculpting, you really feel that in your back. I feel like I don't need as much material here, so I'm gonna again shave off. So here you can see exactly how that design is going to fit into the sculpture. I'm going to be focusing on the high points, so I'm looking at right here in the hips, in the shoulders, and the top of the head. I want to give a little bit of space. Three, good. And this one, let's do 1.5. There you can see how that queen is going to fit inside. I'm not worrying about the secondary forms of those curves on the silhouette. I'm more focused on just the high points and the low points. You can see I'm given plenty of space, so I don't want it to, I want to be well outside of the edge of the sculpture. So I've drawn a line here for that front outline, and then I've just drawn a line across to keep me guided as I go across. And then as I'm cutting, I want to make sure that that blade is following both those lines. So both the line here and the line across here as I'm moving the blade into the stone. If I start to deviate from one of these lines, if I maybe I'm coming in too much on this one or I'm cutting in too much on this one, I want to make that adjustment so that I'm following both of those lines as I'm going across. And made major cuts to the sides for the high points and the low points of the waist. The thinness of the waist is going to be right there, hips right here, shoulders up here, and the crown on top. Then I turn to the side. Now I'm making cuts, the major cuts for the high points first, and now I'm going in areas that I know I'm just going to remove that material. I'm laying in these lines, and that'll just make the grinding a little bit easier as I go later on and continue to remove material. Try to solidify this outline, but I'm going to keep it basically one plane. I'm 90 degrees to this plane right here. We're not going to start rounding things off just yet. So one of the things I noticed was that this area of the sculpture is lacking some stone where I'd prefer that there be some additional stone right there. And so what I'm going to do is take some of the stone powder and some of the smaller chunks of stone as well as some countertop epoxy. I'm going to mix the epoxy with some of that stone dust and then epoxy some of those larger pieces of stone into place where I feel like I wish there was more stone to work with. Now, is this going to look good and is it going to look convincing like it was part of the natural stone? I don't know. We're going to find out. If it looks terrible and I just don't like it at all, then I can just cut off the part that I removed with the epoxy, and it's basically the same situation where I'm at right now, where there's no stone in that area for the design of the sculpture. Liquidy right now, so we might need to add some more stone dust. So I want this piece of stone to go about right there. A lot of the epoxy spilled out to this back area, so if I was to do it again, I probably would have built like a box or something, the exact shape of the base that I wanted. wanted to pause for just a second just to let you know what I'm doing, what I'm thinking about as I'm pushing in and starting to try to capture a more accurate representation of the maquette. I'm starting to focus on just making the stone sculpture look good, and if there are things that I like about the design in the stone sculpture that I prefer over the maquette, then I'll stick to those things. As I'm sculpting things, for me it really helps to have a center line that helps to guide all of the forms, and because this is a symmetrical sculpture, so there's that center line. And then also what helps me is I really like to do this kind of line work where there's a plane change. So here you can see where the shoulder moving into the chest has this distinct plane change, and I can highlight that to make it even more obvious what that is. And that just helps me to make sure that the sides are matching if I'm sculpting something that is supposed to be symmetrical. Make sure that those shapes that are made up by that line work are similar shapes. And if they're not, then I have to see what is the issue, what do I need to fix. If I wanted to make this line, if I wanted to bring this line in, let's say like that, then I would draw that in. Let's do that on either side, and the end sculpture will probably be more like this because it's still quite a bit thick all the way around. So I do that, and then I'd remove this slice, and I like to just color that, just say, okay, this chunk is a chunk that's going to be removed, and then I would grind that down, and then same thing on the other side, but keeping these shapes very similar, and that will help me to make sure that I have a representation of those forms. And then I want to highlight areas that I don't want to touch. If there's areas where I think, oh, that's like really close to the surface, I don't want to touch that anymore, then I'll give an indication of that with some different color. And then I'm making these kind of shapes. You can see this kind of almost like a mask, like Darth Vader or something. But it's built up of these shapes that help me to see the form a little bit better. This is much easier to tell if the sides are symmetrical than if it's a rounded form. If it's built up of these triangular forms or flat planes, then it's much easier for me to say, okay, those planes look like they're coming off of the center at the same angle and they look about the same shape. If there are areas that are low on the sculpture, like here there was an area that I was just missing some and it was higher up on the other side, and you just have to grind down on the other side. I wish there was more material here, but there isn't, so you just have to match those two sides so that they're the same, and then you can go around and continue to work on the symmetry. But when you're missing material, the sculpture just has to get smaller. The whole thing has to get smaller, or else it'll become disproportionate. I like to just shade in areas where I'm going to remove, and then I can push down with the grinder and take away those areas. So, had a little malfunction with the camera, stopped recording when I was working on the crown, but basically what I did was I went in and marked just the center line here and then across that at a 45-degree angle, and then some additional lines just to get an idea of where I should put these little rivets for the crown. Then I just took the angle grinder with the sanding blade, this is 50 grit sandpaper, and just sanded down some little divots in the crown just to see how it looked, and I think it does look a lot better. I hate that when that happens, when people say, oh, I didn't record this last part, but I was planning on recording the whole thing, but I did miss that, and it's kind of an interesting part. I think it helps the crown look better. I like it better than this design for this, and so that's the goal of the piece, is to have a better sculpture than the maquette. So I'm getting pretty close to wrapping up this sculpture. I still need to drill the base. So I need to drill a hole and then I'll epoxy a threaded pin in, and then I need to purchase a black, probably a black granite base for this to go on top of. With this sculpture, I did go to a polish, but then I thought it looked better at a little bit less of a polish. Sometimes with some pieces of stone, when you polish it, it makes them look almost like plastic. So having it a little bit of a duller finish or a more matte finish actually looks better in some cases, and I think that's the case with this limestone. So I'm going to go more of a matte finish. I just feel like a matte finish just has some more weight to it and looks less plasticky.